Hi, I'm Jade and I wanted to do a really quick video today about my top tips for OCD recovery. Just background on me, I've suffered with OCD since I was a really young child, and it hit me really badly with real event harm type themes when I was in my early teens and all the way through my 20s, leaving it to be extremely debilitated by the disorder. And I've worked for the last few years on my recovery, and I'm really pleased to say that I'm now the proud mum of 2 little girls, super happy, running my own business, and I really want to share some of the tips that helped me get to where I am today. So the first thing to say is that there's no quick fix tip, and I know I remember wanting those, I remember waiting for those. What's the one thing that's going to get me better? So the first one I've got is, it takes a lot longer than you think to really reach recovery. How I would describe recovery in terms of how I feel, and Rob Bray of OCD Recovery has mentioned this a lot, and this is how I feel: the absence of chronic suffering and anxiety. So I don't feel chronically anxious anymore. It's completely lifted. So whereas before I would be in a constant state of anxiety with my constant intrusive thoughts and fears, that is gone, and I don't have any panic attacks anymore at all, and yeah, I'm extremely rational now, so it takes a lot for it to bite me. It's been about 6 months since I was last triggered, and I've said it before in another video, that was a few days after having my baby, so it was just, I put a lot of it down to hormones. So it takes a lot longer than we think. There were many stages in the recovery journey where I thought about giving up, because I thought, this is as far as I can go now. And I just want to say that if you want to and you want to keep going, there's a lot more ahead for you. One thing that I found really I had to come to terms with during the journey is that I had to do way more exposures than I thought. I used to think, oh, well, I've done exposure therapy, it didn't work for me. I had to do a lot more work on exposures. Now, I talked before a lot about unconditional self-acceptance and rational thinking, and I really started working on that about 3 years ago, and just started to learn about it and rejected it fiercely for like a year. It takes a long time, but I had to keep going. I was so motivated. And what I missed out for about a year was, actually, I have got a lot more work to do with facing fears and really going for things that I really just didn't think I could do. I mean, I would be talking to some of the people that supported me like, I cannot do this. I cannot drag myself out of bed another day and face these fears. I cannot do this. And I don't know how I did it. I just don't, but I remember feeling, because I was so low and I wanted to die, being honest, I just was so low. I thought, I'll do anything now to get better, and I'm not accepting this life. I was in a box. I was OCD controlled every area of my life. And I just thought, I am not doing this. I do not want this life. And I'd kidded myself for years that this was okay. Avoidance was the key. I'll just stay in my room and I'll just watch Friends and Netflix. And I don't like going on a holiday anyway. I'm a home bird. I always used to say I'm a home bird. I'm so not. And God, it was just, OCD convinced you of anything. It convinces you that you are this wallflower, shy, inward person. You don't like interacting with others, and you don't like family events, and you don't like, but it's not, it's the fear. So that was a big one. It takes a lot longer than I thought. So don't give up. If you're like halfway through, I know we shouldn't measure, if you're like feeling a bit less anxious and you've done a bit of work on unconditional self-acceptance, you've done a bit of exposures, but you're still not feeling well and good and happy and thriving in life, keep going, don't stop, keep going. The other one, another one is, I needed a lot more actual one-to-one and group therapy than I realised. People will often say like, oh, I've seen my therapist, I've had like 10 sessions, I'm still not better. But I had, and I know not everyone's in the position to be able to afford regular therapy, but I had a one-to-one every 2 weeks for quite some time. So even if I was feeling like in a good place, I would still commit to that therapy. I did group therapy really frequently when I was feeling in a good place. I didn't need the one-to-ones anymore. Now, obviously, this can be with whoever you're working with. I happen to work with OCD recovery, but this could be with whoever you're working with. Don't sort of like do 5 sessions, feel a little bit better, and then be like, oh, I won't bother with therapy anymore. And the big thing as well is if fears are still latching in a big way, you know, there's still work to do. It doesn't matter how long you've been working on it. It doesn't matter if you've had 6 months doing nothing and you feel bad about that. I felt so guilty for so long. Like, I haven't done anything on my recovery for like 6 months. Like, go easy on yourself. This is a really difficult disorder, and that's part of the journey. And sometimes that 6 months of not really working on it at all just helps things cement a little bit. The third one was be accountable yourself. You know, I fell into victim mode a lot. Like, oh, why is this happening to me? This is awful. Oh, I'm never going to get better. And then I started to realise, like, well, I'm not going to get better if I don't work at it. Why would I get better if I'm not going to work at it? You know, you don't go on 3 5K jogs and then suddenly run a marathon. It's really hard, and it's a shame that it's so hard. You know, I found it easy to get about 50% better from my OCD. Not easy, like manageable. But it was work to get to a really good place with it. So that's another one. What else was I going to say? You know, keep disputing the irrational beliefs. The fears that I had, once I truly started to believe that whilst I didn't want them, they wouldn't be the worst thing to ever happen to anyone in the world, and I could stand it, that's when things started to shift. But that took a super duper long time. So that work is very easy to give up on, and it's very easy to see it as another fad or another, oh, I tried that, it didn't work. But I mean, when people ask me how I'm doing now, am I recovered? All I can say is the things that used to scare me, they've got nowhere to go anymore because I've applied the tools that I've learned. And so it's quite difficult to be scared of them again, because it's like I've made peace with anything that could be thrown at me in life. And it's a really easy mistake to make, that we're saying that we're like just accepting, oh yeah, it's true, because acceptance isn't agreement. But one of the big things for me was just really working on, really fiercely disputing, why would that fear be so terrible? I don't want it. I really don't want it. But what we're trying to do is train our brain to react like a person without OCD would. And I love giving examples of things that don't scare me. And if you think of something that doesn't scare you, that does scare someone else who you know who has OCD. You know, like when you've spoken to someone like, I'm really scared of this, and you're like, oh, I've never had that one. Try and think about what your brain does when you're exposed to that type of fear, okay? And that's what we're aiming for. That's a healthy, rational result to a potential trigger. So I'll give you an example here. If I was out to dinner with someone who had extreme contamination OCD, I've never had contamination OCD, okay? So let's say the waiter walks over to us. I've not even noticed that as he's holding the plates, he's done this and then put his hand back on the plate. Or even if I have, I've gone, oh, I hope he didn't touch my food with that hand, that's a bit gross. The person with contamination OCD, I'm gonna get sick, I'm gonna be in hospital, I'm gonna be ill, he's just passed on a deadly disease to me. It's rational because it could happen, it could happen. Now, this is where we trick ourselves to say that our response to the feared scenario is okay. Doesn't everyone worry about this? Like with postnatal OCD, doesn't everyone worry about the safety of their kids? Of course they do. They don't like the idea of something bad happening to their kid, but they don't really think about it. It doesn't latch. So what I always say is try and picture how someone without your fear feels, and that is what you can achieve once you learn to no longer be afraid of it. So like I said, I was not afraid of the waiter potentially contaminating my food. And that is how you can feel about your fear once you have learned unconditional self and life acceptance. Because me, with the normal thought process, was it happened really quick and I didn't even notice it. He just touched my food. Could that have been like germs going onto my food? If it was, I could get ill from that. meh, I doubt I would anyway. And even if I did, why is it so scary to be ill? So I'm not scared of getting ill. So obviously it doesn't latch. So that's really what I'm getting to. The last one that I was going to share today is just to not lose hope. The biggest thing that I've realised is there is no, I'm sure some people have more severe OCD than others, I'm sure there are, because I had chronic, extreme OCD and others might have had mild, but don't lose hope if yours is extreme, because I found that all that happened was because of avoidance and compulsions, I just made it more and more tight. I just made it latch until it was like rusty and the bolt had even fallen off. And that doesn't make me more broken than someone who was able to loosen it after a few sessions. So keep at it, keep chipping away and working at it. All it might mean is that you have been even more sucked in and it's become more, but it's not worse than someone who's released a little bit sooner. So I really hope these few tips were useful for you today. If there's any comments or any topics you'd like me to cover on OCD or my own journey, just let us know in the comments box below. I make it my mission now that I'm feeling loads better. I just really want to share stuff with you guys that I would have wanted to hear when I was having a really bad time with OCD. I would have loved to have watched these types of videos, and as much as at times I'm super busy with my children and it's like, I really want to make sure that you guys don't feel alone. And since I had such positive feedback to my last video, I just felt really motivated to share some more stuff with you guys. So anything at all that you think would be useful for me to cover, please let me know. Thanks.